I'd like to call into order the September 22nd, 2020 meeting. Everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Councilwoman Harris has not made it yet on our call-in. We will attempt to get her shortly again. Does any member of council have a conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest with regards to any item on the agenda? If so, please stand. Councilman Nern?
No.
No. All right. Amendment and approval of the draft agenda.
I have no changes.
No changes
Mr.
for me.
Borman?
I'm good. No changes.
All right, moving on to our closed session. Pursuant to 143-318-11A-5, to instruct the public body's staff concerning the position to be taken on behalf of the public body in negotiating the price and other material terms of a proposed contract for the acquisition of real property by purchase. Do I have a motion we go into closed session? All right, second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Call this meeting back into session. We come out of closed session. And do we have the comments on the closed session?
I have a motion to authorize Lisa Anglin to sign the offer to purchase 4 acres of land adjacent to Fire Station 2 located at 7149 Old Georgetown Road for $75,000 and to contract with Baxley Smithwick Attorneys at Law to perform the title search and to handle the closing for said property.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have any discussion? Ms. Harris, did you get all that?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
No one opposed? Okay, good. Thank you, Ms. Harris. Next up is our council discussion. Mr. Borman, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Nothing to add.
Any questions?
Thank you. Nope.
Okay. Mr. Nern?
Nothing.
Ms. Harris?
Nothing.
Mr. Phillips?
No, sir.
Mr. Corbett?
Nothing.
Okay. Moving on to our public comments on agenda items only. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per. Do we have anyone in the back? Okay.
Rich Serrato, 517 Twisted Oak Lane, Sunset Beach. Mr. Mayor and Council, how can you even consider having a dredging public hearing that would knowingly place our elderly community at pandemic risk when you don't even know if the state or the USC will approve the permit to dredge South Jinks Creek, or even the possibility that they may add costly environmental protective conditions to the permit? Now there is also a new legal revelation. Research by 2 independent attorneys that the town has no legal authority to impose any special dredging assessment on any Sunset Beach property or property owner. This material was provided to you by Mr. Hildeman. With all of these unknowns, along with the many costly variables, including dumping the spoils near shore, or whether the USAC will even approve the requested 5-foot dredging depth levels, requires an explanation why this meeting is so urgent during this pandemic. Otherwise, it appears that this event is designed to be nothing more than a political public relations campaign in order to promote this endless and costly 5-year mandated program to dredge South Jinks Creek. That is approximately 90% of the project cost that only benefits 69 plats out of 334 impacted plats. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else back there? Nobody else for public comments? All right, if there's no more, we'll move on to old business. Budget amendment, vehicle purchase. Ms. Tara Drop, you gonna do that for us, Cindy? You gonna do it, Lisa? Okay. I knew I didn't see Tara unless she's invisible over there.
We are having some computer issues this morning that takes Tara away from you all. This is the 2 vehicles that you approved to be purchased. So this is just a housekeeping budget amendment that needs to be adopted.
Okay. That being said, do I have any questions by any of the council members on these purchases?
No.
If so, would someone like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the amendment as written.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Nothing else, we'll move on to the next. We'll go to the offshore drilling and seismic testing resolution. Mayor Pro Tem Corbett, you have that one, please, sir.
We have in the past several times done resolutions putting out our position that we oppose any offshore drilling and seismic testing. When after Labor Day, President Trump extended moratorium on oil and gas drilling to places along the coast, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina. He left out North Carolina in that moratorium. And with that, we proposed and have a recommended resolution that go out to include North Carolina on the resolution. Last week, Governor Cooper, the news announced that Governor Cooper had reached out to the president to get North Carolina on there. And on TV news last night, there was a report that Senator Tillis had reached out to the president, and the president had said that he will add North Carolina to the list. I don't know if it's been officially done yet, but I think we should go ahead and adopt the resolution, get it on the record, and send it out. We may not need to send it to all the coastal property entities. We can see what happens, but I think we should still adopt the resolution.
Do I have any discussions, any questions?
That sounds good to me.
No questions for me. Ms. Harris, do you have anything to add to this?
No, I think we should do it.
Okay. Mr. Phillips?
I agree.
All right, that being said, do I have a motion?
I move that we adopt the resolution.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Next up is the planning board direction discussion. Mr. Todd Rademacher.
I think we put off. Yep, there we go. All right. We good? Okay. What we've got here is just some considerations and growth. I don't know if you all want me to go through that a little bit on that email, just for the general public who might be watching the video, the online stream. So, you know, what brought this to our attention is just the rapid pace of growth that we've seen recently, the influx of the sanctuary, the towns at Seaside, you know, the new purchase of property over there at Sea Trail. You know, I want to open with really just there's no, in North Carolina, there's no inherent way to just stop growth outright. That's not a tool in our toolbox that we have. So once we can really get past that notion and that idea that we can't stop it, we can really look at how we can guide it. What are the tools in our toolbox that we need to unlock to take the next step to ensure that Sunset Beach stays a premier beach community, premier golf community, premier community in North Carolina in general. So we just need to identify what the issues are that need to be addressed for the community. It's your town, they're your ordinances, they need your guidance to get to the end vision for the community that you all want to have in place for now and for the future. Advise the planning board of how you want to grow, whether that be with less density, height restrictions, a major overhaul of the ordinance, what have you. Also, a good land use plan is important to help guide this growth, and the regulations of the UDO must, should come from the guidance that's found in a well laid out land use plan. The land use plan itself cannot be enforced as a land use document. In North Carolina, it's something that should be followed as a guide to direct how we should adjust our UDO. And as we look at those things, there's probably some places now with the rapid development that we've seen that weren't in place when we first started, I guess back in 2015 when the last land use plan was first begun being redirected. So a good land use plan can be a great foundation for writing a proper UDO and making sure that the right UDO ordinances are in place. That being said, we are currently doing a lot of really good things within the UDO, a lot of good changes, a lot of updates, a lot of things have been adopted over the years that really were somewhat proactive. We're protecting a great deal of trees, even though it doesn't really feel like that sometimes when you see the new development, but a lot of that has to do with the state stormwater regulations that we have out there. We're requiring sidewalks in all our new developments. We're requiring street trees being placed. We've adopted a fantastic architectural code, at least on our main corridor, not necessarily for the whole town, but for our main commercial corridor that we have. You know, and we're just doing a lot of really good things that have to do with lighting and putting a good plan into place for development. And we're seeing where some of our holes are as we're developing projects in the recent past and in the now, so to speak. So what can we do? Some of my thoughts on the community based on some of the discussions that we've had over the years, or over the year, really since this development's been taking place. I would recommend leaving the Mud District and Sea Trail alone. I think they're inherently designed and developing exactly like you want them to. The Mud District is meant to be dense. It was designed to be dense when it was first laid out in 2000 and I want to say 6, 5, when it was first laid out.
What is a mud district?
The Mud District is the village at Sunset,
What is mud?
multi-use district.
Okay.
Thank you for asking for that clarification.
Yeah.
So we're seeing that develop in basically the manner that it was supposed to. Granted, not all the uses are exactly in line with what they were supposed to be. You know, multifamily is multifamily. We're seeing apartments as opposed to maybe condominiums, but the multifamily pieces are going where the multifamily pieces are supposed to go. We're going to start to see some commercial development in there where the commercial development was supposed to go. That whole project was meant to be a more dense project. You look at Sea Trail, same thing there. You know, you've got a convention center, you've got 3 golf courses, 2 clubhouses. That project was meant to be dense, relatively speaking dense. You know, so you want to have that flexibility to put in the condominiums, you want to have that flexibility to put in the townhomes, so they can eventually facilitate a resurgence in the golf courses or a resurgence and a reopening of the convention center, which obviously would benefit not just Sea Trail, but the town in general with the overall revenue structure. So those areas I would leave and let develop more or less as they are. You know, one things we can look at in some of these areas, review the density allowed for multifamily development. I'll give you an example. MB1 allows for 21.7 units per acre right now. That is an excessively high number of units. I wouldn't recommend going anywhere over 10 units per acre, generally speaking. You know, we got to look at what are the needs of the community for multifamily. Sunset Beach generally consists of an older demographic, and multifamily will be needed for residents who are transitioning out of single-family homes over time and would still like to stay within Sunset Beach, where their friends, some of their family, and you know, the things that they're used to, going to the doctors here locally, going shopping here locally, volunteering here locally. We'd like to, you know, those multifamily uses will allow them to stay in the community and help it prosper into the future. We already talked about the golf course packages, and then and then another thing to think about is, do you desire multifamily as part of a mixed-use development? Some more, you know, seeing more of that along this corridor, like we have in the Village at Sunset or the MUD district, where you have more mixed-use buildings and things of that nature. Something else to think as we look at ordinances, do we want to nurture commercial development? If so, reviewing the current ordinances in regard to parking, setbacks, etc., may be advantageous. From a planning perspective, pulling the building closer to the street can create a better sense of space, especially if you can envision Sunset Boulevard with buildings closer to the streetscape, maybe some awnings, some cafe structures, if you will. Nice wide, you know, 8 to 10 foot wide sidewalk going down that street, and not, instead of looking at buildings and looking at people and looking at a bustling, you know, vibrant community, as opposed to looking at cars out in front of a building. Let the buildings work with the street to create a nice corridor. There's things we can do with ordinances to make that happen, and we have the luxury most communities don't have, and that is the fact that we have one property owner, for the most part, that owns all the vacant commercial land on our main corridor, and it's vacant. So that's huge. Another thing to look at as far as growth is the ETJ, the undeveloped part of the ETJ. For whatever reason, it was zoned MR3, which is one of our most dense zoning districts, which is relatively atypical when you look at what you zone in ETJ. Generally, your ETJ is, you know, something a little more rural agricultural typically. Obviously, that doesn't make sense here anymore. Or something where a developer might have to come back and get some more approvals. Right now, the way we're set up, MR3 is going to allow you to do potentially massive amounts of multifamily, large quantities of single family with minimum 7,500 square foot lots. So when you look at that area, if I could step over to the map, we're talking about this area over here, mostly. And then there's some other areas.
Did you have maps to hand out?
I do have maps to hand out. Sorry about that. For those of y'all who can't see it, there you go. But those areas, you know, you're basically giving them a use by right now to put in massive loads of people. And in the ETJ, those are, it'd be great for business development for those areas, but they're not tax-paying citizens, if you will. Those are in areas that are going to get the services of the town, i.e. Building inspection, zoning, and in this case, they'll get fire department too, just because of the county structure. But we will be responsible for all those UDO components of enforcement in that area as well.
Todd?
Yes, sir.
So do I understand correctly that the density definition would be contained in the zone definition, yes?
Correct. Each zoning district has its own maximum density limit set onto it.
Where do the zones become approved? Who approves the zones? Is that done by the town? And will the zones work in the ETJ as well?
Yes, yes. Like, so currently, so zoning works exactly the same whether it's in the town limits or in the ETJ. MR3 and Sea Trail is exactly the same as how MR3 works for the sanctuary, which is in the MR3 zoning district. The density limits, whatever is in the UDO applies 100% to in the town limits as well as the ETJ when it comes to anything in regards to the UDO.
Todd,
Yes, sir.
so can we change the zoning in our ETJ?
Yes. Yes. The town can go through a process to rezone anything at any time. And there's a whole process to it, but yes. Yes, with the proper public advertisements, we can do mass rezonings, yes. And it gets done all the time across North Carolina. I would recommend something with a lower density single-family component as opposed to the large density that is proposed there.
And what area of our town ETJ would be subject to us changing at this point in time?
Well,
you know,
if
we just approved Sanctuary. Okay, Jaguar's Lair is already in. What are the big plots of land do we have?
Well, there's about 350 acres-ish between Jaguar's Lair and the sanctuary that's completely vacant and unspoken for, if you will, as far in regard to development.
Is that the old golf course?
That is
Angel
the old
Trace?
Angel Trace Golf Course. And there are also several tracts of land on the other side of town as you're going down Beach Road that are not necessarily MR3, but various zoning districts that probably haven't really been changed since the zoning map was first laid out, whenever that was. That's typically how this plays out. You know, so if you go through a larger planning process, looking at these areas and say, hey, listen, you know, what's the name of that neighborhood? That last property before you get to the Calabash River, over there by Landing 3, I believe. That is zoned commercial, and it backs up to all single-family homes. And that might be an area where we want to look at in the ETJ. There are a couple other vacant tracts of land in that area that we probably want to look at as well. You're right, a lot of the area is developed, but there are areas with some pretty large tracts of land that you can guide much better through some tweaks with the zoning map as well as the ordinance.
And you mentioned that it has a really high density in MR3. Do you happen to know what that is per acre?
If it goes into the multifamily, it gets again into that 21.7.
Okay.
It gets pretty high.
Tom,
Yes, sir.
sorry to keep interrupting.
No, that's what we're here for.
Like almost everybody else in the town, I'm concerned about overdevelopment, especially what's going on in the county. I would like you to look into seeing how quickly we could act on the MR3 that are left, to make that single-family housing. And I remember in the past seeing zoning changed, but I forget it's a long process, isn't it?
It's a little bit longer process if we go out and we're going to do it on our own, as opposed to a citizen, or a developer that requests it. In this particular situation, at least in the MR3, talking specifically about those zone areas that are zoned MR3, it's a little bit easier because we're talking about one property owner. But we are talking about, mass mailings and, of course, advertisement to get that done. But yeah, looking at it and making sure that we actually even have a zoning district that's appropriate to rezone. This may entail having to create a more unique zoning district that's just curtailed to single-family development, which I think in the land use plan is something that was recommended. But yeah, I think we need a single-family residential zoning district that sets a maximum lot size a minimum lot size at, say, 15,000 square feet. You get any bigger than that, nobody really wants to maintain that much land anymore. Any smaller than that, your density starts getting a little bit.
Those are basically quarter-acre lots.
Mm-hmm. It doubles what MR3 requires today. MR3 right now is 7,500 square foot minimums, which nobody's really doing that small. I mean, but they will try to shoehorn one in if the dollars make sense.
75 times 100. That covers most of the island.
Well, yeah, but we wouldn't be talking about the island. I wouldn't, the island, as far as the island goes for this planning discussion, I wouldn't, just to make that point, the island is pretty much done. Knock on wood. It's going to be a lot of redevelopment. You'll see the cottages be removed as time goes on, or added onto, as the case may be. But the last 5 years took care of the last chunks of land, if you will, for the most part out there. I don't believe there's anything really left to develop on the island proper itself. So the zoning districts for the island are pretty much right. I don't see where, we've talked about commercial in the past. It's going to be a tall order, just for the uniqueness of this barrier island and how far it is away from the mainland, in theory.
So you're kind of talking about two different sets of developments, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
One, you talked about commercial.
Correct.
Okay. And we, or the previous council, went through a process and did the Gateway Corridor overlay. So you're talking about redoing that for the commercial one?
Well, and I haven't even quite got to, this kind of leads into what I would do with form-based code.
Okay, well then let me just put one other thing out there. When we go to the MR, I think you need to clearly identify to us what are the areas you're talking about for us to consider to be rezoned, rather than just say this hunk of purple stuff over.
Well, it would be that I would, well, there's no point to rezone anything that's already been subdivided. That horse is already left.
It's already done.
So you're talking about vacant ETJ land is what needs to be analyzed.
Yeah. Is there any vacant town land that needs to be rezoned?
Like within the actual municipal limits?
Yeah.
Not really.
Okay, I mean, so
Yeah.
the point is identify for us those plots that we need to consider, I mean, as one thing, and then what are rezoning options, what they're used for now, and then what you are recommending we reuse them for.
And I think that's important because I think there's a misconception of how much vacant land is actually out there. And I think maybe the Sea Trail sale probably brought that to light for a lot of people. But there's also a lot of vacant land still available in Sandpiper Bay. If you look at the maps, there are at least 3 tracts of land that can be developed to a significant degree if and when a developer ever goes in there. And then the ETJ. Those are probably your 2 largest areas for future development outside of the Sea Trail area.
Todd,
Yes, sir.
how does the ability of the town and its infrastructure to be able to support these things come into play with our considerations about zoning for the approvals of some of these things that are being done now? Has that been assessed as a part of the approval process?
Well, as far as what the town services are provided to a new development, they're really you're talking about, most of all these new developments that we've approved are all doing private streets. So there's no expense there to the town. There is pretty much everything's left to the homeowner. You know, we don't provide water and sewer service, which is generally the largest utility given to a development.
Right.
So we don't really have a lot of expenditures other than provide. Police department obviously is the one, if it's in the town limits. The sanctuary and Sunset Ridge, they're not even going to receive that. Anything in the ETJ is going to develop private streets, Brunswick County Water and Sewer, and you're going to be getting the sheriff's department. The development that really is going to increase usage needs for other facilities, such as public works and police, are going to be your infill developments, Sea Trail, the towns at Seaside, which is in the town limits. Your infill, all the lots that were created in the 60s, 70s, 80s, as those, 50, 60 years later start becoming developed properties, and those are the areas that you're going to have more concern with. It's not really going to be the new subdivisions. They're going to kind of take care of themselves because they're going to happen mostly in areas that we don't have to provide services to because of their ETJ location. But as far as, there's nothing we can do for all the vacant lots that have already been created, say on the island, off the island, on Shoreline Drive, in Sea Trail. Those are known entities. It just so happens that because the baby boomers are all retiring at the same time, basically, that we're seeing all these lots that have been sitting vacant since the 70s, if you will, get built on, basically all in a 7-year period of time. And it's something we have to look at because we still have roughly 9 to 10 years of the baby boomers retiring. So that's your largest slug of population, all leaving the workforce and going to their favorite places to retire, whether it be the mountains, a lake, or in our situation, a beach town.
So what you're saying is that because within the town limits we're pretty much developed, that's not something that would be a consideration, let's say, for anything that's being done. It's all within the ETJ, and they take care of themselves. That's what you're saying?
To a certain point, there's not much we can do. Let's just use Sea Trail because that's the one we all know so well. Let's just say there's 1,000 lots already in there. There's not much we can do from a town zoning standpoint to stop them from building on pre-existing single-family lots. That It's done. That's a known entity. We can easily plan for that. We know that there's going to be X amount of houses on these vacant lots. You know,
But
we
if
can
it's
figure
building
that out.
on, I mean, we're not considering that to be a change in the population. It's the same people that are going to be staying there, and they're just changing what they already have.
Correct. Correct. Well,
Well, no, if you build on 300 new lots, or 300 old established lots,
Your
and
population
you
goes
finally
up.
build 300 houses there, just to throw a number out,
Yep.
then you are increasing the population, and there would be some impact on our police services and our town services.
That's what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, but you're talking about the impact on the town that would come from the ETJ if they are not zoned with limits on it to keep.
we have an opportunity to make the ETJ a real asset, and that's how the ETJ has to be looked at. The ETJ's number one asset for us isn't necessarily that it's going to bring in property taxes and new residents and things of that nature. It has the opportunity to be an area that can provide users to our commercial district that we want to have here on the court, that we're eventually going to have at some point in time. Those folks may not pay property taxes, and that's where looking and guiding your commercial growth becomes so important, because the number one place you can get the best thing your town can have, any town, is a strong commercial base, because your strong commercial base pays more than its fair share in taxes, which means you can keep the tax base, the tax requirements for single-family homeowners lower, because commercial property is generally valued higher, and you have sales tax revenue, alcohol revenues, and those are going to come from non-property owners. Those are going to come from folks who live in Ocean Ridge, folks who live in the ETJ. Hopefully that convention center gets open someday, and these are all people who don't reside in the town limits or in Sunset Beach, who are pulling a larger load for the taxpayers of Sunset Beach. And that's something to really consider and is really important as you go forward. Obviously in this community, well, in any community, taxes are number one priority. Keep them low.
Yeah,
But if your only revenue source is single-family homes,
yeah, you're in
it's
trouble.
extremely difficult to keep taxes low, and eventually the state will come in and tell you need to, you're losing money. Just things to consider, and that's a complete
Can
side
you
conversation.
just clarify so it's totally obvious on ETJs?
Yes.
You said like they probably don't pay property taxes.
No, they do
Isn't
not.
it? They do not pay
They
property taxes.
do not pay Sunset Beach property taxes.
taxes. They pay the county.
They pay the county, yes.
Okay, and we provide fire services there, but we do not provide police services?
We do not provide police service there. There's a time when the police may be first responder because of a mutual aid agreement, correct? But we will not be, if 911 will dispatch them through the sheriff's department.
Mr. Mayor,
It's not likely that anybody could get to the sanctuary faster than we can.
Right, there's quite a few areas that
Yeah.
like that.
Joe, you need a microphone. You need a microphone.
There's several areas around
Not
town
on.
like. There's several areas around town that are like that, in the ETJ, that the sheriff's department's primary caregiver or service giver, but we're much closer. So we end up helping quite often in those areas. However, it's not our primary jurisdiction.
If I may, I spoke at length to the chief last week, and the call for our assistance has to come from the county. It does not come from individual households.
But my point
That's
is,
correct.
yeah, but my point is that call goes out, And even if it goes to the sheriff's office, if the sheriff's office doesn't have anybody closer than US 17, we're likely going to end up responding. Is that?
A good chance, and depending on the type of call, whether there's somebody already there, very close to being there or not, we're going to respond as assistance, backup. So.
And just to round out the discussion, for an ETJ area to become part of the town, they have to vote on it and request it?
Pretty much nowadays, that's how that works.
Pretty much. Does that mean that's how they
Well, I
do
mean,
it? or
there's a
other ways?
way to do it, but you have to have like 98% of the people agree to it. So if you can get 98% of the people to agree to anything, you know, it doesn't take much to get 2 people to vote out of 100 against annexation. You know, there is something in the general statutes that allows a forced annexation. But it's going to be a really tall order on it. You know, if you take 363 vacant lots and you've got to get 98% of them to say yes to that, we don't have enough to offer them to justify being annexed into town. At one time, we were the utility provider, you know, and utilities are what drove a lot of annexation requests over the years. You know, unless our ordinances became advantageous for zoning, I've seen that work over the years. People would annex into communities because the zoning was more advantageous to the developer, the setbacks were more advantageous, the height restrictions were more advantageous, what have you. There was an advantage to coming in. But if you're going to develop a piece of land in the ETJ, you're already getting our zoning, you're already getting our inspections department, you're getting water from Brunswick County Utilities, you're probably doing private streets because that's what most of these folks around this part of the state seem to do in this area. There is really not much reason to voluntarily annex into Sunset Beach.
So there's no way aside from that where the town would say of 100 calls that have gone out, 90% of the time we're the primary respondent. For the police, let's say.
To force annexation and payment
Yeah.
of, not that I'm aware
No,
of. That,
okay.
and that's way outside my skill set, so I'm not, I'll be honest, I don't know how police funding works 100%, but I would say that to speak directly to annexation, unless you have some sort of mutual aid agreement, that would have to be something, a mutual aid agreement that the town and the county would have to work out, say, hey, listen, we're doing 90% of your calls, we're getting zero money for it, this isn't going to work for us.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's a mutual aid agreement adjustment that you would all would have to work out at a much higher level than zoning.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's correct. The one department that would be affected the most would be the fire department because of the fire district as the ETJ builds out. But the fire department would be receiving all the fire fees.
Right. No, I
So
understand that.
your employment level would increase because, of course, you'd need more firemen. You may need another fire station, but all of that would be self-supported.
Yeah.
Right.
But this is, we're kind of overlooking one of the impacts. We add 1,000 homes in the next 10 years to Sunset Beach. We're adding the cars that go with that. You know, it's not really clear that these new developments on 904 even have turn lanes, entry and exit being added, although, you know, they may or may not.
They do.
It's clear, but you're going to have more traffic coming in, more impact, if you will, on the roads within our area. You know, obviously more people will want to come to the beach, you know, that type of impact. So those are some of the, you know, the growth considerations that we have to do. You know, we really don't have a problem with water supply or electricity supply or even the fire department. That's kind of contained. But if we grow another 1,000 homes and the population that goes with that within our district, you know, the size of our fire department may be impacted.
Sure.
The ability to handle that. But how we absorb the population is kind of the question.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is you have to accept the fact that you will have to absorb that population. And settle on what that density is going to be.
That was the basis of my question for the infrastructure assessment. Can your roads handle it? Can your commercial district handle the amount of people that it has to now have support?
Well, the commercial district definitely needs to get bigger. I won't say not the zoning district.
Right.
The
That'll be
vacant
driven
land
by
needs
the
to be
need. That'll be driven by
developed
the
with
need,
commercial properties to facilitate the needs of the growing community. Obviously, Food Line is probably, from what I hear, is fairly maxed out, or I won't say maxed out, you know, but fairly busy, which is fantastic for Sunset Beach and it's fantastic for Food Lion, but, you know, success begets success, so you have to think that at some point in time, someone's going to be looking to build another grocery store, and that's going to bring
maybe
other
the
uses.
message from the town should be to the various chains, say, hey, this is what's happening here. You guys might want to consider this empty space that we have here, that type of thing.
Well, and there, that goes back to funding a promotion campaign for the town.
Right, exactly.
You know, and working with your local realtors to ensure that the word is getting out there on all these commercial properties
Right.
within the town limits of Sunset Beach.
Right,
You
and I
know,
don't know.
and I know they're all doing that individually, but, you know, coming up with a strategy, potential, this is outside zoning, but coming up with a strategy that promotes that, hey, instead of going to Town X, you come to Sunset Beach. And, you know, there's certainly things you can do to entice businesses to come to your
This
your-
is a
your
part of
community.
planning, though. Maybe not zoning specifically.
Right, but
certainly
this is
about
part
planning.
of, you know, land use planning and things of that nature. Yeah, absolutely. But marketing, I mean, it's basically
Yeah.
marketing Sunset Beach and saying, hey, listen, we're going to set what our ground rules are. Here's the ground rules, so you know that we're going to get, you know, the highest level of development possible. Now that we've set those ground rules, we would like you to come into our community. We are open to you developing in our community.
Right.
We're okay with you bringing in whatever, you know, box store you might have, but we want to make sure it doesn't look like every box store that you might have.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, I always go back to that there, you know, there's a Wings in, you know, pretty much every beach town, including Martha's Vineyard. But you would never know it when you drove past it. And that's okay, you know, because it is a commercial property that's servicing a need of the folks, but every community's got stores. It's just how you present yourself to the public through your ordinances is what you really need to use as a guide.
Yeah.
Ms. England, you got a question? or-
And that goes back to the economic development position that we talked about during budgeting. That would be that person's primary job, would be to sell this town to the commercial developers,
Yeah.
and could even play into the real residential developers for promoting annexation, voluntary annexation for their developments.
Good point.
Well, I think some of these developers, haven't we talked to some of them about voluntary annexation?
We've tried.
Pardon me?
We've tried.
Yeah.
I talked to Bill Clark at length about it. They know the ramifications, and they'll tell you straight out, you know, if the homeowners want to annex into your community, that's great, but it's, you know, take the sanctuary, it will say 7 years worth of Sunset Beach taxes that they don't have to pay, you know, so that's a pretty significant amount of money on their profits when you take that into consideration. So if we had something, a carrot out there that they really wanted, that they needed, that they could use as a nugget to sell their homes, that's what we're missing right now. Water and sewer used to be that nugget, and now we don't have anything that entices anybody to. It's just dollars.
So besides one of the world's best beaches and tremendous golf courses and good climate, There's no other reason people would actually want to come and live here, buy houses.
I can buy that.
They're sure buying a whole lot of houses now.
Right, but I can buy that house and have access to all those things and not pay an extra 16 cents.
Yeah, I'm not saying anything about
That's
the
the problem.
annexation.
Yeah.
But what I'm getting at is when you're talking about marketing and tracking, if you want more stores to come, you have to have a population base to support those stores. You know, we still have 2 grocery stores right in our limits that are empty, and they have been for a good number of years, and they can't get filled, and not even getting filled with smaller shops. And part of the reason, and the same thing comes up with restaurants and that, part of the reason is the ability to support those restaurants year-round,
Right.
which needs lots of population, but then lots of population takes and a not highly, very dense populated community and makes it more and more dense.
The population numbers here
Yeah.
can support pretty much anything. It's how do you get them to choose to come to Sunset Beach town limits as opposed to opening up a store just outside or locating further away in Ocean Isle Beach, you know, on their corridor. How do you flip that script on them? And that's about marketing. It's about getting out there and saying, hey, and this is speaking as far as wooing a commercial development into the area. If you wanted to say, let's say you wanted to have a Harris Teeter, you know, there's no Harris Teeter around here. You wanted a Harris Teeter. You know, that developer says, hey, we're going to look at possibly rezoning a portion of the sanctuary for up there at Old Georgetown and Seaside. All right, you can't do contract annexations or anything like that, but you know there might be some things that you can do. And this is part of your problem too. Is the vacant land you have is outside the town limits. So let me go back. Let me scratch what I said on the 903 because that's out the ETJ. Let's say you've got a small business that wants to operate a hotel in the town limits at the villages. They've got a hotel site. That's a better example. There are tools in your all's toolbox that you can do as far as revenue sharing, tax incentives, things of that nature. That was one of the ways when I was working in Surf City that we were able to get Lowe's Home Improvements. We did a 10-year revenue sharing with Lowe's Home Improvements, and they decided to because we did that, and Pender County didn't want to do anything, you know, negotiate any kind of you know, deals like that. They located in the town limits of Surf City. You know, in 10 years worth of revenue sharing, more than made up for their costs to build a store inside the town limits. You have tools. It's whether or not you want to use those tools and have the support of the public to use those tools to entice developers.
And that, again, is an economic development position
Correct.
that you all need to think about creating
Correct.
if you want to go that route. But we're getting off topic today.
Yes.
So let's come back around to zoning. And when you asked Todd to figure out which pieces of property in the ETJ that you all need to consider rezoning, that's a planning board action. Him and the planning board would go out, figure out the land, figure out the consideration, hold public hearings or public meetings to get feedback from the people in those areas to ultimately end up with a recommendation to you. And at that point, you all would hold a public hearing on it and then consider the rezoning. But that would be one of the directions that you would be given to the planning board, is for them to go out, seek that property that we can rezone, figure out the best zone for it to be rezoned, and send that recommendation up to you after they do their due diligence to find out if if you're going to have opposition to that rezoning or not. That make sense?
Yes.
So that's one of the things the council should tell the planning board to look at.
Exactly. And if you do that today, I'll put it in writing to the planning board, and Todd will take that to his next meeting, and they will be out of the gate off to the races.
So do you need a motion for that? Or how does that?
You can do it as a motion, or you can just do it as a consensus, that if that's what you want the planning board to start looking at while you're developing everything else you want them to be looking at, but that certainly is a starting point.
Yeah, I think we should
Well,
do
I'm
that.
okay with that.
Yeah, I think we should do that.
Jan, are you okay with that?
I am.
I think we definitely have a consensus then.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
So,
One more
you
thing.
go ahead.
I haven't even gotten to the big thing that I wanted to talk about today. And that is my number one recommendation for this town, and that is the form-based codes. I think we can talk about density, we can talk about building height, we can talk about architectural codes and all that kind of good stuff. But what we really, at the end of the day, what all these conversations really lead to is redoing our codes into or at least for some of our districts, into a form-based development code, which generally, it basically throws out everything you traditionally know about zoning. And it says, we're going to worry more about the form of what's going out there. You know, we're not going to worry about what's going in the building. We're going to worry more about the form, the open spaces, the common areas, the fact that the community can have a gathering point there, that they're walkable, you know, that they're places where friends and family can meet at commercial businesses or mixed-use villages and things like that.
So is that a part of the UDO, or is it replacing the UDO?
It can be both, either or. It just depends on what you want to do.
Would the planning board look into that too?
This is much higher level than planning board. And
From the links that you sent through, it looked like a lot of the towns use outside consultants for that.
yes, if you're gonna go to a form-based code, that is not. You'll find very few staffs across the country that
No, it's very
can
complicated.
facilitate
Yeah.
It's a complicated, intense process to get to the code. But once you get to the code, it's a relatively simple code. You know, you're talking about generalities. You're looking at more of what do we want in our town as opposed to what do we not want in our community. You know, and then you can kind of start bringing those things in. And I listed off some of the communities, and if you look at the communities that have adopted those types of codes, they're highly successful, more upscale communities, because you have a known end product. You can set a form-based code, say for this district right here on Sunset Boulevard, and it won't matter if Dollar General's coming or TJ Maxx or, you know, pick a box. You know what you're going to get. You're dictating your end result up front. And they just have to say, okay, we're fitting this into this style that they developed. It sounds like architecture, but it's actually a few steps beyond that.
Right.
You want to pull your buildings closer to the street. You know, you want to get that parking behind the building. You guys have all been to those kinds of communities before.
Yeah, but then we just go through this, go back to the Gateway Corridor overlay, which was our version, the Sunset Beach version by previous council, of laying out and defining the parameters for our commercial portion of the town. And are there many areas outside our overlay corridor that really would be affected to go into that?
Sure.
When I looked at, okay, as I read the links and read the stuff that was in here, I had a trouble picturing what part of our town could be rebuilt into one of these similar communities that you cited to be an upscale urban area, if you will.
Sure.
And I didn't understand how it would work, and so
Well, like
need to be
anything,
taught.
like anything else, it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
You know, you can pass a sidewalk ordinance, it's going to take 10, 15 years for us to see the end-all gains of establishing all this sidewalk network as properties develop. Just like a form-based code, it can be tailored to specific areas. You know, and I wasn't here for the overlay district. Professionally, I wouldn't have gone the overlay district route. You know, you've only made those policies good for a very specific area of town. But what if somebody rezones a piece of property down the street, or, you know, things of that nature? You know, the town does get an annexation, or you want to do something different, you know, more neo-traditional style development in the ETJ that a form-based code can help you get to. You know, I would have, instead of restricting parking, the way I read it a little bit, I would have certainly looked at pulling the buildings forward. It's just differences of opinion. It's not that it's wrong. I just think that for what Sunset Beach is trying to get as their end product, researching more deeply and talking to a few consultants about what that can achieve for this community would be a really large benefit. All these vacant tracts of land, obviously we could set codes, form-based codes, to ensure that they're developed in a style that we want, you know, not the style that a developer per se dictates. And that's kind of what you're trying to do. Everybody always talks about, we want to make sure that Sunset Beach stays the Sunset Beach that we want. Okay, well, let's put that into paper. And so when the next Bill Clark or H&H Homes comes to develop their next 150-acre tract of land, here's your picture. Become the next integral part of Sunset Beach. You know, that's what we're trying to do.
So is that something we could do, or we need consultants to do that?
You're going to need a consultant for this.
Yeah.
I mean,
You mentioned time and money. Well, like John, I couldn't picture where it would go. I picture moving stuff from an old shopping center that wants to redevelop, and okay, you want to do this, you got to move it up by the road. You mentioned time and money. How much time and how much money?
depends on the scope of the work. You know, I mean, if you're just looking to do certain areas, obviously it's going to cost you less. I'm not a consultant, so I'm not in that business. You know, I honestly, I don't know the answer to that question. This is just supposed to be.
What areas?
You know, obviously, I would look at, like we've talked about, I would look at your vacant ETJ areas, and I would look at your commercial corridor. I think those are the two #1 areas where you have the most to gain in Sunset Beach. Even if you put, let's use Pelican Square. Let's say you develop this, that's what, probably a 7-acre tract of land. My money is that at some point in time that whole building gets raised. You know, with the right development code, and you don't have to live with an old building forever. You know, you should be designing your code with the thought that that building could get raised, or the gas station could be torn down, or something like that. And what do you want to go back in its place? You know, what's going to be best for the community in 10, 15, 20 years? You know, with the sanctuary going across the street, and you know, the other, that say, you know, 1,200 new citizens, we'll just say. These are distinct possibilities. What you see today is not what you're always going to get. You know, what's going to happen to the banking industry as people move further and further away from utilizing brick and mortar bank locations? You know, how do these properties here, if that starts happening, because we're seeing branches all over the country closing, what happens to these branches here, and how do they redevelop? You know, and then we just have a huge swath of vacant land. So it's an overtime thing, and if you have the tools in place, the community that you will set up for the future will be exactly what people are talking about and want to see as you progress.
Does the overlay get to part of that, at least?
It's a really good attempt, but the problem is it's an overlay district. So it only affects a finite area. And like I said, if anybody wants to rezone some properties into commercial, they don't have to play by those rules anymore.
It would be a simple exercise, it seems to me, to expand the area rather than change the whole that's what you're saying is the main effect.
No, I
Certain area.
Mr. Mayor,
and I'm,
you also want to be looking outside of town limits. As if you do end up hiring an economic development person, one of that person's main functions would be to communicate with these areas outside that are commercial properties to try to entice them to come inside town limits. And that could be 179, 904, Beach Drive, Old Georgetown Road. You've got all that property that this would apply if you could have an economic development person that could bring those properties inside town limits. And you just need to figure out what incentives that the town could give those developers to want to annex inside town limits. But this form-based code would make all of the corridors coming into Sunset Beach look the way you want them to eventually.
And the overlay does not?
The overlay district, as I remember, just applies to the main corridor coming into town
correct.
from 904 on to through Beach Drive.
Like, it doesn't apply
Sunset
to
Boulevard.
Georgetown Road down to the, basically the boat landing.
Right,
The boat.
right. So it doesn't take into consideration the ETJ and what could potentially become within town limits with the right opportunities
Correct.
given to developers.
From what I can understand, it's going to be a long, drawn-out process to get there if we go this route. However, once it's done, things will be uniform throughout the town.
That is
Just as a
correct.
quick summation. You don't have to worry about what some developer is going to put up, what it's going to look like, what the bricks are going to be outside the building and all that, because it's all going to be laid out in this plan. I've looked at Ocean Isle. This might be something to consider too. I think they have like a beautification policy. I can send you the code number for that, Todd, later, where it requires a certain number of trees, and they have a point system. So if you don't have these number of points, you
We
can't
have
do
that
that.
here.
We've got
We
that.
have something like that.
We've got
Yeah,
that.
we do.
Yeah.
But so my thought is make it uniform so that you don't have as much of a hodgepodge. So this is all new to us. I mean, we've all watched the videos. To me, the videos to me are very transformative if you're going from an inner city to a small
Sure.
town.
Yes.
But we have the ability to create the small town feel without having to currently destruct buildings in the process.
Yeah.
We're at an advantage there that we're not having to tear down as many old buildings as we are just building new ones that fit what we want the town to look like.
You have a blank palette.
Yeah, I like to go to Southport
Like
and
Hampton.
walk around the little street with the trees and things like that where there are storefronts. I think something like that would be tremendous here. We have the capability to build it brand new that way.
Yeah. But you pointed out that sort of most of our commercial sector now has one owner.
Yes. That's good.
Yeah.
That's easy.
But that's only for the land, right?
That's just the land.
So he'd have to sell to someone that wants to develop a Southport, let's say.
Well, one tract of land. I mean, if you bought any tract, is it me? If you bought any tract of land, you would be beholden to any of these regulations, just like anything else. I mean, he doesn't want to develop the whole thing himself.
No, I understand.
Ideally, he'd sell the whole tract to somebody who did want to develop it, and then it makes it
Yeah.
extremely easy. What you don't want to get caught with is a situation where you get this hodgepodge of, Hardee's buys this tract, McDonald's buys this tract, Dollar General's bought this tract already, and a beach shop buys this, and the overlay district kind of gives those owners a real guide, if you will, a minor guide to how to do it, as opposed to building, like Mr. Phillips said, a cohesive downtown district, I guess would be the best way to talk about it. And you're going to look at it more from just commercial. You want to look at it as how can you incorporate residential units into there, and things of that nature. These are the kinds of things that make a successful business district. I mean, the one thing that hasn't worked, is waiting for somebody to come and build a store.
Todd,
Yes, ma'am.
are we at the point where they should direct you to put out an RFP for a consultant to come and give you more details and timing and cost.
We definitely need to have somebody, if that's something you want to talk about, we can look and bring somebody in. I mean, the Form-Based Code Institute can help facilitate bringing somebody.
Or could someone from the COG come and give them more detail? And
We'd probably be better off, we could probably get somebody out of the Raleigh district or Mecklenburg County to come. Because I don't think nobody in our district's really done it yet. I've talked to the COG a little bit about it. I talked to Wes with the COG. I think City of Wilmington's looking at a little bit of it in their new code. But none of the small beach towns generally have, because this beach town's unique compared to some of the other ones. It's just a unique beach town compared to most of the North Carolina beach towns.
I kind of think we're jumping the gun bringing a consultant in, because we sort of still learning what the terms mean.
How about this? How about I reach out to some of my colleagues in the Raleigh market or in the Mecklenburg County market who work for local municipalities with form-based codes, who have many more years of experience working with them and developing them than obviously I do, and see if I can't get some of those, one or two of those folks to come in and lay it out a little more succinctly.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many things we have to move on. I think what we had in the budget before COVID was really a step ahead, having capital funds for different things. And what we do now is going to direct where the town is 20 years from now. I hope I'm still alive, but numbers are against that. And I have a question for Lisa. To hire an economic development director, do we put that on the disposition of directives, or do we direct you to look into that? This is something we need.
I don't know that we had gone as far as developing a job description, but we can definitely, if you want to put that on an agenda and give me direction on exactly what you want that person to do in terms of marketing, and so I can develop a job description, or do you want me to find some sample job descriptions for you all to look at? But you definitely need to look at funding it. And if marketing is included, you need to look at funding marketing as well. And then that person would bring back to you suggestions for what types of markets to use that money for.
That sounds good to me.
Certainly getting some examples of what that job description might look like and what it would cost and what kind of budgets those, for this size of a town, what kind of budgets do they usually require?
Okay.
If that's available information, then that would be of interest.
Okay, I can get some information together for you on that.
When we get to the disposition of directives, we'll let you guide us as to the date we want to discuss this. You certainly have your plate full.
I think there's sort of a big step in between the introduction of this topic today and bringing somebody in and defining a marketing position and defining whether we're going to go into a form-based code, whatever it happens to be.
Agreed.
I think on top of identifying the ETJ areas that we should be considering for zoning is that you or the planning board or somebody should kind of lay out and identify what are the areas that we're talking about that we would be clearly affected by this commercial regeneration, if you will, that goes into it. If we're talking about talking somebody into taking an ETJ play area or potential ETJ area and turning that into a commercial development. That's one thing. If you're talking about bringing in, you mentioned Lowe's in Surf City.
Well, yeah.
I mean, just as an example, what are the areas that we're talking about to be addressed, and what kind of things would we be addressing? And then, more education on the form-based codes to what I saw was redeveloping a urban area that had deteriorated it and reinvigorating it. A lot of it was tearing down or rebuilding, modifying the traffic flows and stuff like that. And we don't have those.
No,
I mean,
and that's an easy way for them to sell it to most communities, but it certainly can be done for rural areas just as much as it can be for urban redevelopment.
So from my, sorry.
I'm just sort of moving blind and not really comfortable where we're going.
You all are nowhere near ready to pull the trigger on saying, hey, go get a form-based code, and that certainly wasn't my goal walking in here today. I just wanted to have the conversation and hope to get you guys in a direction that took you down that road, because I do believe professionally that this is something that has, and not every town can say this, I think this is the right move in the right town for a long-term good that can establish Sunset Beach into the future as a leader in the area, visually, economically, socially, what have you. And I think this is the number one tool you will have at your disposal if you're willing to choose to use it.
So you have this vision, you think this would fit on how and where and when we want to go.
That's my job, I'm a planner.
Okay. You sort of communicate to us what's in the how, what's in the where, and the things that you're looking at and seeing here in this town that are amenable, suitable for the future that you envision, and start us off there so we understand what you're thinking.
But and here's the hardest. The hardest part is selling it because it's different. And here's the thing: we're not going to just take everything you've seen developed over time here in Sunset Beach or in most communities across the country. It's lot and block. We're going to set it here. We're going to do this. It's very mundane. I mean, take the Dollar General, for example. I mean, really, if you had the right form-based code, that building would have been pulled all the way up to the front of the building. You would have required 1 or 2 stories on it, put some other uses in there, whether it be residential or some additional commercial, but we didn't. We don't. You got to think about the open space that would have been that would have been not just open space. You have to think of open space as more park space, communal areas where people want to gather, which is exactly what you hear every day from folks on the street here in the community. Is they don't want to see more asphalt parking lots. They don't want to see, just masses upon masses of people without any kind of form and thought being put into it. The way our ordinances are laid out right now, we just take what the developer submits to us. We're not giving it to them and telling them what we want. And that this is kind of flipping it over, back the other way and taking control of the town the way, the way we should, in my opinion, respectfully.
So this is, like other members said, this is all very new to us. I do think it has legs for a long-term solution for a lot of the concerns that many of our citizens are voicing. So as far as, I guess we're here to determine if we're giving the planning board direction on whether or not to pursue this idea. One of the other things is seeing how lengthy of a process this is. I would like them to also, if council would agree, to consider looking at some of these other high-density areas, that's been mentioned, point those out to us, to see what we can do to try to limit some of this, because the growth that we're seeing in the multifamily, I think a lot of it is, it's just, we hear it, all of us hear it all the time, and we have to do something about it, and to me, this seems like the best viable option, even if it takes us some time to get there. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I think we already agreed to that, right?
Yeah,
I was just trying to.
Yeah.
right. Well, one last thing that I want to say, we all get the emails, stop the development, how can you let this happen here? And it's pretty clear that we can do something with the zoning, but we cannot stop this development. There's no way to stop it. All we can do is have a little bit of control in it. Is that correct?
That is correct. The best we can do is make sure that we're using the best tools at our disposal to control and manage the growth for this specific community and what the people are looking for to develop. But the way North Carolina works, if you've got zoning on a piece of property, regardless of, unless there are no water and sewer connections available, through your water and sewer provider, the underlying zoning district rules the day.
So, do we have have we given all the direction we need to?
Does anybody else have anything to add? If not, well, we'll now look to maybe make a meeting in the future, put it on directives, where you can come back with some of this stuff and we can discuss it more. When we have a little bit better plan. I mean, you've got a few ideas today
Sure.
for the council. We'll go from there.
Perfect.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you,
So
Todd.
appreciate it.
Very
Yes,
good
sir.
report.
Thank you.
Moving on to the revised dredging special assessment preliminary resolution. Of course, we canceled the other one because the Mary Creek and the Turtle Creek was not in there. We'll be looking to reschedule this with all that's going on. I would hope that the council would look at the earliest to be at least November the 7th, would be the earliest before we would reconsider. That would give us a couple of weeks at November the 7th or November the 14th that we're looking at. Well, if we get past then we're going to be dealing with the holidays, and we'll have to think about that to see what we're going to go from there. But what does the council have to add on this?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I would really like to have an answer from the Army Corps of Engineers and the state before we do this meeting. I mean, I think this is premature. If we don't get the permit, all of this is premature.
Ms. Anglin, when are we looking to where we'll be getting an answer from the Army Corps? What is the timeline on that, please?
Mr. Neal has advised you all in the past that by the end of October, you should have a feel for what their decisions are leaning towards, if you don't have their actual decisions by then.
With that being said, with that recommendation to November the 7th, do you see us being covered by then? Unless something just out of the ordinary comes up. But I mean, would that be a tentative date to set up either the 14th, 7th or the 14th? Because like I said, once we get past that, you're going to fall into the holiday seasons. And, council may not be here, people may not be here. I mean, we just need to look at that. But with that
Right.
giving us another month, do you think that gives us adequate time to see, basically pretty much know where we should be at?
It's Robert's best guesstimate at this point. At the end of October, you should know at least what CAMA is going to say.
So November 7th gives us a little bit of leeway.
Correct.
Does that fall within the time frame set out forth for the public comment period that we have to fulfill it by?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So I'm comfortable with the 7th.
You comfortable with the 7th? Ms. Harris, would you be comfortable with looking at the 7th? With it giving
Yes.
us the time to go into what you had brought up?
Yes.
Mr. Nern?
Yes.
Mr. Boardman, that schedule fine with you? Mr. Phillips?
I guess that works.
Okay.
You need a motion
Need a
to
motion?
adopt the resolution and
To-
schedule the public hearing.
Yes, ma'am. Motion to adopt the resolution to change the public hearing to November the 7th. Do I have a motion?
We're still talking November the 7th at 10 a.m. in the morning at Fire
Same
Station
time, same
number
place.
1 in the open bay.
Correct.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Moving on, discussion of dredging public hearing agenda outline.
The resolution, do we have to approve the resolution, the adoption of the resolution?
I thought we just did.
You did that with the motion. You adopted the resolution and scheduled the public hearing for November 7th, 10 a.m. at Fire Station 2.
Did we adopt the inclusion of Mary's and Turtles Creek?
Yes.
Okay, fine.
And
All that
that's,
was in there.
that's the reason that the resolution was being brought back
That's
to
why it had to be
you.
brought
Fine, as long
back.
as that's clear.
Right, for Mary and Turtles Creek to be added.
Okay.
And
Okay,
then the public hearing, if I may, is on the conditions that you laid out in the special assessment preliminary resolution. It's not a debate on if you should do dredging or not do dredging. The resolution shows that this council has made it clear that they intend to dredge. And this is the manner in which they are going to special assess. So that's what the public hearing is supposed to be for, is for the people to come and give you comments on those conditions that you have established in this resolution.
Okay, now, like I said, now going to the public hearing agenda. I know some of you had maybe reached out to Lisa and put in some ideas for her to come up with I guess basically with just a format that we'll be using in the meeting. What discussions do y'all have about this? Mr. Nern, do you have anything?
No, no.
Ms. Harris, do you have anything?
No.
Mr. Borman,
Yes.
go ahead.
So we just talked about the objective of the meeting. Lisa, you said it's to discuss the proposal that's been made and has been agreed to. So we should lay out what those items are that we're there to discuss as an agenda. I had also suggested that because we have a lot of affected residents who are not resident here full-time, that might not be able to attend the meeting, they should have an opportunity to ask their questions and make their statements as to pro or con, whatever it is that they want to say about that. That they can do that in writing, and I think we should allow that with limitations so that it sticks to the agenda, that it's of a certain length, and I think it should be limited to some number of words, 100 words or something like that, to keep it brief and to the point. So that's my suggestions for the meeting.
And that's covered in this, the discussion points that have been laid out for how we do the meeting.
Right. The public comments to a minute and a half for those that are attending in person, I think is a good
Yeah.
a time period to allow.
And the suggestion about 1 to 1.5 hours, I think we should give it at least an hour and a half
At least.
to do this. The, sort of the format, we set up the venue based on whatever the spacing guidelines are, but have a mic set up and people line up behind that mic to give their questions. The mayor moderates the meeting.
Now, is the open bay then defined as an outdoor venue from a standpoint of meeting the,
Well, it's a government facility.
The Bay Area is very large and has the very large doors, and everything will be open. Government operations is exempt from the executive order, so we are not bound to the 50
okay.
outside or 25 inside. We will definitely practice social distancing, and mask will be
Mask,
required,
Yep,
and the bays are big.
And I'm kind of envisioning like going up to the bank teller. There's a line that you can snake it through the facility properly spaced. So then you're not trying to shift people out in large groups. Let's say if you had seats and you're shifting 20 people out and 20 people in, it'd get a little wonky. So if people just come in, say their piece, they go out the other door on the other side, they're not crossing each other, of course with masks.
But are we also going to, if you will, in that area, set up spaced out chairs that people could come in and sit and stay, and then, you know, have the teller line set up, and all of these things demarcated on the floor or something?
Yes, the chiefs are working on that for me and letting me know how many chairs that we will be able to put in the bay.
Okay. And again, with the full council present,
Correct.
do we answer questions?
I guess it depends on the question and if you're comfortable answering it or not.
will Robert be there?
Yes,
So if there
he will be there, but he
technical-
will not be there to make a presentation
Right.
or anything.
No, but he'll
He will just be there to
available
assist you all
Yeah.
if you do want questions answered.
Questions about the resolution we put forth.
Mr. Mayor,
So,
Yes, ma'am? Go ahead, Councilwoman. Harris.
should not the questions be directed to the specific topic on the assessment?
I think that's what we're
Yeah,
saying.
yeah, that's what I'm saying, and that's what it would be about
Yeah.
in regards to the assessments. It wouldn't be about whether I want it dredged or don't want it dredged. It would be in regards to what the meeting is set up for, which is about the assessment.
Right. As
That's
long
what
as
the
that's
questions
clear.
and the comments would be aimed at. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So,
Well, would
So-
not the affected property owners specifically, who are the ones clearly the target of this meeting and this assessment, they could also say whether they oppose dredging or not. I mean that's, their point could be that they oppose doing this if that so happens to be the view that they take.
Correct.
But that's primarily, again,
because of the assessment,
yeah, because of the assessment.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
You can oppose,
Yes,
the
because
way
number
it's
one,
done, you can oppose the timelines and the percentages, the number of years to do it, or have something different there.
Right.
And if you're one of the property owners, you could express you support doing the dredging or you are against doing the dredging.
Because
That's
you agree
correct.
with the assessment or you
Yeah,
don't.
yeah.
as number one is, it's your intent to dredge these specific areas. So they can definitely give you their feedback
Yeah.
on if they oppose or support.
But this is not a meeting to debate the pros and cons of the depth or the width or the route and all that kind of stuff, or the spoils locations. Okay.
Well, those comments can be made, they just don't have to be addressed.
So will, can we include this instruction as a part of the invitation, I'll call it, that you plan to send out so that it's clear what we intend to accomplish and the boundaries within we expect the meeting to be addressed?
Yeah, I can make the agenda and send it out to you all and put it on the October 5th for you all to approve the agenda as, and then we will send that out with the notice and the resolution that go out to all the affected property owners. Now, I do have one question on, if you're going to take public comments in writing, is it just from the 334
That was the
affected
question I
property
was gonna
owners?
have, because if not, it's gonna be, it could be absolutely broad, and it should be based on those people that is affected by it. For the write-ins especially, I mean, for the other, you know, it's whoever.
So
But as
then-
far as writings,
This-
I think it would be the people that own the homes,
The
or own the
manner-
property, one per family, not multiple letters from the kids and everybody, just one. That way, everybody gets their adequate time, and gets their voices heard.
I agree with that.
Okay, so the way that staff will handle that is when the public comments come in through email or in writing, we will verify that the person signing that is the actual property owner is listed as the property owner on the parcel. And they'll have to supply me with their parcel numbers
Correct.
to be
That
able
would really
to,
help us.
to verify. And then I can certify to you all that,
So what you have on October 5th for our meeting will be guidelines for that too.
correct.
Yeah.
The only thing with what you just said, I don't know that everyone knows what their parcel number is, but they'll know their address.
It's on their tax statement that they get every year.
Okay?
But
I mean,
she'll know it.
if they
Correct,
don't,
you gonna know.
if they just put their address down, we can certainly locate
Okay,
it by that.
yeah,
But
fine.
I would like to at least suggest that and the notice that they receive, the parcel number is on that mailing
Oh,
label.
perfect, okay, but then I withdraw
And I
that.
can instruct them that.
Okay.
I would add, if there's anything else, if not, I say we give you the direction to bring, you will be bringing that stuff back to us at the October the 5th. So unless there's anything left there, I would say we move on. Y'all have
I have
anything
one
else?
question.
Go ahead, sir.
This meeting is for the affected property owners to make their statement. It's not open to everybody who wants to comment.
All of your meetings are open to the general public.
Yeah,
Okay?
yeah, we can't limit that.
But we don't have to address those comments.
Yes.
Anybody else?
Good, sir. I'm good.
Everybody good?
I'm good.
All right, moving on. Town administrator search procedure discussion. Mr. Corbett, I think you've
Let me-
put this on there.
Let me switch pages. We've already gone through and had Lisa send out notices to advertise that the position is there. Okay. What I did was I gave Lisa a straw man, aggressive agenda to go through and kind of guide the council on the steps that we need to take. And so, you know, with that, it starts on about the 30th of October, which is that the deadline that you gave? The day, so applications should be in. At which point, actually, as the applications come in, you can prepare them for us to review. Is that correct? And score,
Correct.
and score individually as a council people. But for sure, once that comes in, the council will have to or will need to individually review the resumes, rate and the people evaluate where they stand, and kind of come up with our guidelines for paring down how many people we were going to go forward with. And end up with, the next step would be to take a smaller group to have something like a Zoom or a Skype interview. And so I've suggested 2 dates. Both of them are Fridays, I think. No. Yeah, 2 dates, the 6th and the 13th, for us to plan that we would meet as a group to review and decide, having scored the people, which ones we're going to eliminate automatically, and then try to take it down to a point that we may need to meet twice, take it down to the group that we would actually consider going and doing a Zoom meeting or a Skype type of meeting where we have a chance to just talk to the people who are still in consideration.
Will that be done as a group, John? You're suggesting
yeah,
a group?
Yeah.
Okay.
It would be all of us here and a guy on TV.
Fine.
And we'll have in the packets that Lisa's provided, we have a sense of what kind of questions are there and that can be asked. Once we've gotten that and we determine whether we're comfortable with the number of people to do a Zoom, we need to set up and conduct those Zoom interviews. And just for planning purposes, you know, a target would be looking for the week of the 16th. You know, if we get too many resumes and it takes longer to do this, we have to adjust. But these are just kind of guidelines that we should sort of aim for with the objective of reaching a decision on the town administrator before the Christmas holidays. So we have Zoom meetings or some type of remote meetings, and based on those, we take a look and we decide what the top 3 or 5 candidates, and we decide what we're comfortable with. There's no perfect number and there's no perfect solution there. At which time we have background checks conducted on that. And as we move through, we will have to go and figure out exactly what we want on the background checks, how extensive, and whether we do it through our own town capabilities, or whether we reach out to a outside professional to do the background checks. Having done the background checks, we knock it down to which of these candidates we would do face-to-face interviews with. We have to, there's a process, and it was laid out in the paperwork that we have, that we invite the candidates in. They get taken around the town so they can see the town, so they can see the department heads, and at the end of that process, we as a council interview them as a group. And after we've gone through however many candidates we've decided to do, we make a decision. Are we going to hire one of these, or are we going to start over? And so that's where the timeline is. So for the council point of view, rather than, we're not really making decisions right now, but these are guidelines so you kind of anticipate. For any of these council meetings, they are closed meetings, right? So we have to, you know.
You have to start at an open meeting and then motion to go into closed session. So it's two meetings.
The only problem I have with that is that Friday. That's not a good day. Is there any way we could change it Thursday or either do it on a Friday afternoon?
Which date is that, Shannon?
On the Fridays, see, that would actually be the day before we have our town meeting if everything goes up, that Saturday.
Yeah.
But I mean, if we could either do it on a Thursday or either on a Friday afternoon after 2 or something, that would work, but that's just gonna be a hard time. If we do it, you know, Friday morning or whatever.
Yeah. Well, when this got drafted, we didn't have the 7th
Yeah,
of
I
November
know,
meeting.
I know, that's what I'm saying, but I mean, what is a good day for the council? If we go ahead and pre-plan and she gets this up and this is what we both go by, what is the best day for y'all working as a whole?
John, or Mr. Mayor, I had advised the council that I would be out of town between the 18th till December 1st.
There's something I have as well. I'm probably going to be out from October 19th or so to the 30th.
And these dates need to be fluid.
Yeah. They were basically
Because
just set up to try to get a
Yeah, this
thing
is
going.
basically just to
We
show
can
you
tweak
the,
them around. Yeah.
right, the outline of, and once we get into the October meetings, you'll know more of the numbers that are coming in, how quickly you're going to be able to get to town hall to review these, because this is a confidential process. So I do not make copies of the resumes. So you would be reviewing the originals independently. So
That being
means
said, have you had any outreach yet about it? I've seen it on Indeed, I looked. And
I
it's on
do
there.
have a few that
You
have
have
come
had
in on Indeed. It went up on the league website, the managers listserv, and the Charlotte and Raleigh papers will be coming out this week. It will not be in print in either one of those, but it will be online in several of their broadcast areas, because it's just cost prohibitive
Yes.
to put it in print. So as they come in, I will notify you all that, I think in the past what we've done is as soon as I had 10, I would notify y'all that I had 10, and then you would start coming in and reviewing them. 10 seemed to be a good number for you to be able to dedicate a couple hours to sit in here and review those and score them. If that number seems too big, we can cut it in half to 5. And then once you see what the numbers are, if you only get 25 or 50, and you may want to try to receive 100, you might want to extend the deadline out for another 30 days. So then that would push all these dates down. So this, you just need to be flexible with the dates. And until we get to the point of where you all are ready to start meeting as a group to discuss them, you really don't need to establish any special meeting dates at this point.
Ultimately, I think this is a good starting point for a model
Yeah.
to go for. I think that's
And that's all it is. It's,
Right.
it's kind of lay out
But trying to
checklist,
trying to get
things we need
something
to
lined
do.
up for us. Yeah, everything up there goes good from there. Anyone else have anything?
So do you want me to stay with the number of 10, or do you want me to say?
10 would probably be good. Do y'all agree with that?
Yeah.
10?
Once you get to 10,
10 worked
once you get to
fine
10, you
last
can
time.
come in, yeah.
Well, just from experience, first off, 10 gives you a chance to see the range that's there, and we'll be working with a point sheet, and it gives you enough of a group to within each of our own minds, decide what kind of ratings we want to do it. We may, after we've done the first 10, want to knock it down to 5, depending on what it is, just to go through. But the batch of 10 gives us a good experience base to figure out how we want to rate people and score.
All right. Does anybody have anything else? If not, we'll allow Lisa to move forward in the staff, and we'll go from there, and we'll discuss that at a next meeting or a later meeting. Anybody, anything else?
Nothing else from me.
Ms. Harris, you good?
No,
Okay, moving on to new business, town membership with various organizations. Mrs. Anglin, you have this?
I just put this together because since the new council members came on and then COVID came on and then we were away from each other for so long, I just wanted to bring your attention to all of these organizations that we are members of and have some liaisons sitting on some of these things, and some of them we don't have any representation at all, just to see if you all would like to receive email information. I can put you on their email list, and then you would automatically receive information from them. And if any of you want to be considered for a liaison to one of these organizations, some meet monthly, some meet quarterly, some meet in person. The North Carolina Beach, Inlet, and Waterway Association is trying to do an in-person conference in November. Some will be virtual, but some will be in person. And Ms. Kathleen has reached out to me to find out if we will have any representation. She's trying to get a feel for across the membership of if they would be able to hold an in-person conference and what that would look like exactly. And she's looking at Carteret County, which is up around the Jacksonville area. So it would be an overnight stay. I think it's a 2 or 3 day conference. In the past, that's what it's been, but she hasn't given any specifics as to what it'll look like. I just need some kind of feedback to if any of y'all would consider going in person or not. And then if you want to be on any of this rest of this
That
stuff.
was the North Carolina Beach and Inlet. That's the one
Waterway
like
Association.
that.
Yes, if you want, the council will need to appoint the liaisons.
Yeah. Just on the comment, for the Grand Strand, the GSATs, right now we've got it that I'm liaison and Councilman Phillips is the alternate. And actually, we're able to both attend the meetings if we so desire. And that works out good. It gives us flexibility so that if one's not available, the other is there to cover. I like the idea, to the extent if we do this, that we have a primary and an alternate that can participate in these things. And on those where there are email notifications, I just assume see all the email notifications to know what's going on. And if I understood you correctly, all of us could get the emails. Is that correct?
Yes, you can.
Yeah. I would like to get all the emails.
I would as well.
Me too.
We do now. So.
Councilwoman Harris, do you want to receive
All
emails
the
from all
emails
these?
from all the organizations. Ms. Jan, do you want to?
Yeah,
Would you like to be able to receive all the emails from all these organizations?
sure.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Everybody's good with that. Yep. All right. So we have liaison. Ms. Harris is on the Brunswick Shoreline Protection Group, correct?
Correct.
Do we have anybody else that would want to be maybe an alternate or something there, so we can make sure we have representation at this? Anyone would be interested in this one?
Yeah, I would do it then.
Okay. We had Pro Tem Mayor Corbett as a secondary one there to make sure we have representation. Then
What's the difference between the shoreline protection, the North Carolina Beach Inlet and Waterway, and the Atlantic Intercoastal Waterway? It seems like they all overlap each other pretty much.
The Brunswick Shoreline Protection Consortium is made up of the Brunswick County only. And then North Carolina Beach Inlet and Waterway Association is just North Carolina beach areas. And then the Atlantic is the whole way of the waterway.
I got it, okay.
All right, the next one, the NC Beach Inlet and Waterway Association liaison is Councilwoman Harris. Do we have someone else?
I'll do that.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, sir.
Borman.
All right, Councilman Borman will be an alternate for that one. All right, then on the Atlantic Intercoast Waterway Association, we have no one at this time. Is that correct, Ms. England?
Right.
Okay, so we need two on this one. Jamie Phillips. Be the liaison.
An alternate for that too?
Yes,
just
we
so
would
have
need one
everything
for
doubled
both
up?
just to have backup.
Yeah.
Someone like to be the backup for that?
All right, I'll do it.
Mr. Borman, Councilman Borman. All right, the NC North Carolina.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I missed that. I'm sending her to stop the weed eater person.
Okay.
What, who is doing the Atlantic?
Jamie Phillips will be our liaison, and the alternate would be Mr. Borman, Councilman Borman. Next up would be our North Carolina League of Municipalities. We have no representation there, so we will be looking for two there. Anyone
Should
have?
that be the mayor, or does it matter?
It normally is the mayor.
That's fine. I'll be
The
glad to.
league, they just hold City Hall Day in Raleigh. And with the league, it's more for you to get the information than it is for, and then you're going to want representation to attend these things as well.
Yeah, I get
It's
their
just
letters
not
on
that-
the day. I pretty much get something every day from them.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll be happy to be the alternate for that.
Corbett be the alternate, okay. All right, the long-term memorandum of agreement stakeholders. We don't have anybody on this.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Phillips. Someone like to step up and be the alternate there?
I will.
Mr. Nern. Okay, the GSATs, of course, is covered with Mayor Pro Tem Corbett and Councilman Phillips. And then the Cape Fear Council of Governance, myself is on there. Do I have anyone that would like to be the,
Probably.
okay? We'll put Mr. Corbett in for that. I think that covers anything. Has anybody got any questions?
Nope.
And if you'll just make a motion to
I
approve
will.
all of those appointments.
Can I have a motion that we would approve all the appointments for our 7 committees that we have been asked to make sure we have people on? Do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right.
And
Next
I'm
up
sorry,
is,
one more thing. I
Go
may
ahead,
have
go ahead.
missed. Councilwoman Harris is going to remain the liaison on the two
Yes.
that she's on.
on Brunswick and the NC Beach.
Did she?
Correct, Ms. Harris, you are willing to do
Yes.
that? Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
okay. Thank you.
Yes, so we should have someone at everything now. Should be able to have somebody, representation. All right. Moving on to our disposition of directives. I have one for the October the 5th in regards to some various emails that we received. I think that this needs to be looked into. The Chapter 725, House Bill 1406, enacting authorizing the town of Sunset Beach for access for navigation projects. This needs to be explained more, looked into. Lisa, you've got me a copy of what I needed, but we need to put that on there on the 5th, correct? Put that down so we can have that
Do
discussion.
we actually need to do that? We had emails that saying that the ordinances did not apply, and that we were doing the special assessments and for the dredging without authorization. And they pointed out that, questioned whether we could impose the assessments or not, and whether we could do the dredging and not. But they referred to ordinances that happened in and around 2013, 2014. However, the determining law is this Chapter 7, House Bill 1406, passed on the 12th day of July, 1985, that says it applies to the town of Sunset Beach only. And it says the city may make special assessments according to the procedures of this article against benefited property within the city for all or part of the cost of acquiring, constructing, reconstructing, extending, or otherwise building or improving beach erosion control, flood, or hurricane protection works, or navigation projects including dredging and bulkheading canals. This act, Section 3 says this act applies only to the town of Sunset Beach. That's because the other coastal towns, Holden Beach and Ocean Isle Beach, already had the laws that where they could do the dredging. And it was ratified in July 12th, 1985. I mean, that is the legal authority that we have, and everything else derives from that. I mean, there's no need to do any more discussion. And it's been on the books for 35 years. So I don't think we need to have a topic, unless you want, we can put it on the disposition of
I think a
directives
lot of people
and
just
read
ask-
it again.
I think a lot of people just asking for transparency. That's all they asking for.
Well,
If we
well-
got someone that gives that, then the deal's done.
I mean, this
And we shouldn't
is, this
continue
is
to receive them
transparency.
emails.
I mean, the emails were being sent, without,
Checking.
they were citing other people, like the public comment we had today, that 2 lawyers have reviewed the laws applying to us, and they didn't review this law. I mean, this is the law, July 12th, 1985, that says Sunset Beach can do navigation projects that include dredging and bulkheading canals. It's clear. I mean, if
I just
if
wanted
you
to bring,
if you
I
guys,
just
if
wanted
you
to bring
guys
it
want-
out for transparency because I've been asked about it. That's
Okay.
why I brought it out. And if you
Well,
give
well,
that,
is
then
this-
that's satisfied to me.
Is this
But I wasn't the one asking
Yeah.
the question, other people was, and
is
that's
this
what I was asking.
transparent enough?
For me, it
Mr.
is.
Mayor.
But I was asking because I'm keep getting email after email and email. And all I want is for it to be transparent. You just read it, so it's there. Go ahead, Councilwoman Harris.
I think there's been enough questions about this that we do need to have it on the agenda and explain it to the people. And if they want to make public comments on an agenda item, they may so do. So I think it needs to be on the agenda.
What I can provide for you is all of the local acts that have been passed by the General Assembly that has authorized the town to do dredging and special assessments. And I mean, I can provide you with everything, every local act that's ever been provided for this town. If you want me to do that, or if you want me to specify dredging, anything related to dredging or the beach erosion, or, you know, I can do that as well.
I think that would be good.
If you think it's necessary, but I mean, everything we do in dredging has been done in open meetings, as far as I can tell, and discussed out here. And if we want to do and go through a review of all the legislation that applies to our dredging projects, going back to 1985.
This is an accusation.
I got no problem.
This is an accusation that's come from an unknown source. So do we have to answer to a source we don't even know that has claimed that they've studied this and that we don't have the authority?
Well,
I don't think so, but that's.
I don't think so either.
I don't think this is necessary. All this misinformation that is put out about the dredging, who's going to pay, they come up with these numbers that's going to cost $7 million. I mean, that's just spreading misinformation. It's just like people keep using the term spoils instead of beach compatible sand that's going to go in the 10 to 12 feet of water on a certain area of the ocean front. You know, that makes it sound terrible, but that's the idea. They want to mislead people. They're so against dredging that they just come up with actually all these lies. And that's a strong term, but I just used it. I'm going to stick by it.
Supposedly, some unnamed attorneys have come up with this. We don't know who they are. We don't know what their qualifications are to make this assessment. So to me, it's a waste of time.
I agree with Tom.
Me too.
They definitely have a thing, so strike it out. What else on the deposition of directives?
Well, we still have the short-term rental collection company presentation by Tara.
Yes, sir.
And we're still set up October 20th for Councilwoman Harris to lead us in an island parking discussion. And that'll be primarily a workshop unless we have something else urgent to discuss.
Is that correct, Councilwoman Harris? That's still in line for that date?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else?
Were we supposed to get something from
Todd's gonna come back, yeah,
Todd?
but
Yeah.
will that be at the October the 5th, or will that be at the Tuesday meeting following the 5th, which would be, what?
You'll need
Give
to
him a
leave
little
that
bit
up to
more time.
him.
Give him a little more time and see what he
Once
says.
he tells me that he's ready
Okay.
to go on an agenda, I'll put it on there.
All right,
I will add it to the directives with his name, but no date.
okay.
In addition to the two planning board directives that you all gave today, will be listed there, but with no date.
Okay. Anything else? Not moving on to the public comments. Do we have anybody? We don't? All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
We're checking.
She said nobody. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.